I am not going to go into significant detail as far as the storyline because this will be way too long. I will, however, provide a brief TLDR and then briefly go into each of those TLDRs. I hate the father-son dynamic in this game. I think Kratos has become too soft. I think Atreus is just an asshole douchebag. And I do feel like the supporting cast in this game was very well done and very strong. Let me start off with the father-son dynamic. Part of the reason why I hated the father-son dynamic is naturally because I hate Atreus as a character in general. But going beyond that, I felt like the father-son dynamic overstayed its welcome even beyond that. What do I mean by that? In past God of War games, I never felt like the family aspect overstayed its welcome. The family aspect is a major driving force for Kratos' actions in the context of the Greek God of War saga. I knew why he was doing what he was doing, and typically knowing what was driving him and how he was going to go about getting his goals accomplished. That was very understood. And I never had a problem with the family aspects when they did become more focal because, again, they never overstayed their welcome. Here, I almost got no break from the father-son dynamic in this game, which really wore down on me. Another thing is Kratos has become too soft for my own personal taste in this game. Part of this stems from his lack of discipline on his son, and part of this stems from his own decision making in the context of how to handle a combat situation. So, what do I mean by that? Early on in the game, he has an encounter with a certain unknown entity at the time, and Kratos, even though he wins this encounter, he gets his ass handed to him pretty badly. So, the whole time while he's going on this journey, he's already let Atreus know that we're probably going to come across some foes along the way. It gets to the point to where the next destination he has to go to, he is informed that the Leviathan axe is not going to work for him. So at this point in time, you would kind of figure, well, Kratos is going to have to get a new weapon made, right? He doesn't have the Blaze of Chaos anymore. He's going to have to just get a completely new weapon. No, he goes back and gets his old Blaze of Chaos. Now I think here, the thing that bothered me a lot is if you had your old pair of blades the whole time, you already had an early encounter where you got your ass handed to you, why didn't you just take the blades with you? A friend of mine actually gave me a pretty good perspective on things, and I'm going to briefly explain his angle with the situation. His angle, in short, was basically Kratos is trying to move beyond that lifestyle that he used to live. It's a lifestyle that he no longer has any desire or interest in living, and he's trying to do better for himself and as for his son. And this is a very good perspective that I can understand where he's coming from. For myself personally, Kratos should have known from the Greek God of War saga that he is never going to be able to escape his past. There's nothing that he can do to override it, redo it, hide it, anything along those lines. His past is stuck to him like glue. There's a reason why he has the ashes of his family on his body as one of the constant reminders of what he has done. So because of this process of trying to avoid his past, he's in turn made things more dangerous for himself in the long haul of the game. And this is a decision-making process of Kratos that just did not click with me, even though I understand my friend's perspective on the situation as well. Very briefly, I want to talk about Atreus. Outside of one circumstance where Atreus gets onto Kratos and calls him out for only wanting to really communicate with him when he's being needed for translating, I did not agree with Atreus' actions throughout the course of the game for the most part. He's very rebellious. He doesn't know how to respect Kratos at all. Of course, the disrespect goes both ways, but still, Atreus acts like he knows more than what he knows. And even when there are situations where Kratos is trying to save Atreus is doing things to sabotage that said saving, making the situation worse just in general. There was a specific situation where there was a defeated foe, and Atreus and Kratos had come up on him, and Atreus took in the pleasure of finishing off this foe, even though this foe had been defeated, and Kratos let him know that there was no reason to kill this character, let him be. So this kind of comes down to that sadistic killing, and what makes it even worse is later on, Atreus tries to act like he doesn't remember doing that. Like, oh, father, that's not me. I didn't do that. That was basically his stance later on in the game. And that made me feel a type of way because now I'm thinking like, oh, okay, so now you're going to have selective memory. That's real reassuring for future endeavors. Kratos, you might want to be cautious of that because your son seems to have very selective memory. The supporting cast in this game is very well done. Once Mimir came into the picture, that really helped out things a whole lot. Talking about things that has happened in the past, the world lore, and things along those lines. I genuinely enjoyed Mimir as a character. Odin, as an extension off of that, it seems like Odin is a very paranoid god. He seems to be the kind of god that If he views you as even a potential threat, he either wants to have control of you or have you eliminated, either or. There was a part in the game where you have an encounter with this character, and he makes it very clear that I feel nothing. So at that time, I'm thinking to myself, okay, you know, you don't feel anything, so you're pretty much impervious to pain or physical damage, right? You know, it doesn't really matter to you. But no, he literally, you find out later in the game, he literally feels nothing. And this, I felt, was a very well written part of this character, because it displays that sometimes your greatest gift can become your greatest curse. You know, for example, he can't feel the wind blowing up against his skin. You know, he doesn't know what it feels like to touch the skin of another person. Those things like that. You know, he probably doesn't know what anything tastes like also. So he doesn't have those sensory nerves. And I was just like, wow, man, this is actually pretty damn good. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Brock and his brother were pretty funny in this game, and I was pleasantly surprised about that, because I'm not used to the God of War games having any kind of a comedy to it. So having this little bit of light humor, I think, was nice. I don't expect it to be, and the light humor never really overstayed its welcome, and I think that's what I liked about it. It still kept its very serious tone, but that light humor in there here and there was nice. I did like it. Finally, I want to talk about a scene specifically that happened in Helheim when Kratos is on the boat. So in Helheim, there are like illusions, I guess, of people having to deal with their past, and they kind of take a more of a manifestation instead of just being voices and vocal and stuff like that. It takes an actual manifestation. And so they had the current voice actor voice past Kratos. And I want to play the clip real quick.
We are going to get out of here.
Grace me, Father. It is time to end this.
Yes, my son. It is time.
No,
It's that voice again. Do you know who that is?
I do not know.
It is time, my son. Look around at what you have done.
I felt a type of way about this situation because the current voice actor for Kratos also ended up recording lines for the past Kratos in this specific scene. I think the current voice actor for Kratos does a solid job, but I'm always going to be highly and heavily biased toward T.C. Carson or Terrence C. Carson, because he had voiced Kratos for literally 2 console generations, and I really felt like T.C. Carson did a fantastic job voicing Kratos. And again, I'm always going to be biased toward him when it comes to Kratos in the terms of voice acting. It's just somebody that I've grown so accustomed to. I can only hope that the reason why this was done was because Santa Monica maybe didn't want to run into legal issues possibly, and hopefully I can only hope that behind the scenes there at least was an attempt for Santa Monica to reach out to T.C. Carson and ask him to voice Kratos again. As far as like the present Kratos, I understood that they wanted to maybe go in a different direction with the voice acting to kind of represent that aging. I can understand that logic, but again, I don't know all the background semantics. This scene just really made me feel a type of way, and I couldn't really enjoy it. With all of that to the side, one thing that I would say that I did enjoy about the main story is that it did actually bring up the Greek saga. It made references to it, because I did have that huge fear going into this game that they weren't going to make any references to the previous saga. It was going to basically be like, what? Oh, this is a completely new thing. That never happened. So I am glad that it was not forgotten and it was mentioned multiple times throughout the course of the game. Before you even start playing, you can play this game on its hardest difficulty, and I cannot tell you how much I enjoy this change from what was previously known in past God of War games. In past God of War games, you'd have to play through the game once, which would unlock its hardest difficulty mode. I didn't mind that in the past because I could typically go through the main campaigns of those games in anywhere from 6 to 12 hours, just depending on the game. But for this particular game, it is pretty lengthy if you end up doing the main campaign and a lot of the side content on top of it. So I'm glad that they gave players the option to only have to go through this game a single time. In fact, prior to playing this, I was playing a game called Resonance of Fate. This game had literally 10 difficulty modes to it, and they expected the player to play through this game literally 9 times in order to unlock the hardest difficulty. And I'm not a fan of these type of design decisions in games like this. I understand they do it to try to increase gameplay, replayability, but for me it ends up being the opposite, and it makes me not want to play through it a second or third time. In regards to the actual combat, one of the problems that I've had with it was the over-the-shoulder camera. Now I think this over-the-shoulder camera is tolerable for any situations where you have only 1 to 3 enemies, but for myself personally, once it got to the point where there were 4 or more enemies, I started noticing that I was getting blindsided by attacks quite often, and this was extremely frustrating. Now I understand the developers programmed the AI to try and give, you warnings whenever attacks are going to be coming from off screen especially, and they also gave you arrow indications of letting you know when enemy attacks were going to be coming, but I shouldn't have to rely on these things in order to not get hit, and I felt like sometimes I was just pretty helpless. Now maybe the over-the-shoulder camera works for a gameplay, a storytelling perspective. Maybe it works in the sense of a QTE where it's mainly scripted to where you're just putting in certain button prompts, but as far as a normal minute-to-minute gameplay perspective where you have enemies in an action-based setting, for myself, it just did not work. There's a reason why there are action games out there that have a camera that's more panned back. Rather we want to talk about Devil May Cry, Bayonetta, or hell, even the Greek saga IP God of War. And in these games, I felt like I had total control on whether I got hit or not because I could have a more bird's eye view on the field. Now granted, with Devil May Cry and God of War, at least in their first games, there are situations where there will be multiple cameras in an area, and if you moved to a certain part of that room, the camera would switch over to a different one, which you could be kind of blindsided a little bit in that notion, but at least there was some control that you had with the cameras. Whereas with here in this current God of War game, I didn't have any control over the camera at all, and it was set like this. I can only hope in future God of War games, as far as the gameplay element, they'll allow you to have a more classic God of War camera like they did with the control scheme in this game. I can only hope. The next thing that I want to talk about is the Leviathan Axe. The Leviathan Axe is a very functional weapon in this game. However, I don't enjoy the Leviathan Axe. I'm not a fan of the axe. The rune magics are nice, and the fact that they're functional, they're really nice for crowd control, slowing down enemies. It's nice for that, but it's just not a fun weapon for me to use. I did not enjoy it. I know there's a throwing mechanic involved with the Leviathan Axe, and the developers did that as a reference to Thor throwing his hammer. I understood that, but again, I'm not a fan of that. And plus, it's pretty hard to throw an axe when you're kind of in a more open situation at a ranged enemy, when you also have to worry about the melee enemies attacking you at the very same time. Also, its melee attack range is kind of pretty bad as well, so I'm not really a fan of that either. It's very slow, and after a while you can get it to the point where it will slow down melee target enemies because it does have that frost slowdown effect, but again, not for me. And because you have to use this weapon by force throughout a good portion of the game, it really killed my enjoyability of the combat in God of War. Now it does eventually get to the point to where Kratos does get his hands back on the Blaze of Chaos again, and I mean, there's honestly not much I can really say about it. Like, it's like peanut butter and jelly. Like, the Blaze of Chaos, go with Kratos. Like, Ebony and Ivory, go with Dante. I can make all kinds of references, but I'm going to stop right there. It just fucking works. It works. That's all I'm going to really say. I love the Blaze of Chaos. I love the fast attacking pace of it. I love range of it, and yeah, I'm just really a fan of that. I do feel like this game from a combat perspective was a lot less brutal than what I thought it was going to be. Hell, I could even, for myself, it felt like it was even less brutal than the original God of War game. Now, I understand maybe Kratos isn't in his prime anymore, but this is there's a reason why I play God of War, and the reason why I play God of War is because of the brutality. Like, if you play Devil May Cry, I can see people playing Devil May Cry because of the stylish combos that you can do, the swagger that you can have in that game. I can understand people playing Bayonetta because of the over-the-top action, the diva, dominatrix persona, the hair demons, and again, over-the-top action. In God of War, brutality is the thing. that is a huge selling point for God of War. And I feel like it just got cut back way too much in this game. Now, I know some people could say that, well, you know, man, you can only rip off so many Gorgon's heads and stab so many Minotaurs and rip so many enemies in half, but that never got old for me. It just literally never did. And I felt like I didn't have enough opportunities in this game to really be able to do that. I know you could kind of have a more specialized killing if you use like the heavy cleave of the Leviathan axe, but because I didn't enjoy the Leviathan axe that much, I didn't have that option nearly as much. And again, that was a detriment to my game, to the combat enjoyment, was that lack of brutality. Also, another thing is the battles seem too spaced out for my personal taste, especially during the main campaign, because I understand that they were trying to put in story, they're trying to do world building, world lore, things like that. I just felt like there was too much downtime in between fights, because I'm very used to the God of War games where it's like fight, 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 fight. That's what I'm used to. Not very much downtime in between fights. So that in itself was also a turnoff for me in this game. Hopefully there will be more fighting during the main campaign in future God of War games, but I can only hope. Unlike in past God of War games, this one actually has an armor upgrading system to it, and basically the armor is broken up into 3 different types. You have armor that will improve your physical attacks, armor that will focus on improving your rune magic attacks, and armor that will focus on your defense. I like that this is here because again, this helps with player flexibility and having something more keen to people's playstyle, and it also doesn't overcomplicate things. As far as the socket enchantments go in this game, I only want to focus on the armor sockets here. The sockets, once again, allow you to equip a variety of different sockets as you're going through your gameplay experience based on your own preferences and situational. The problem that I've had with this socket system here is there were certain enchantments that I was not able to get rid of, and then I was constantly finding myself going back into the menu to switch out gems so that way I have the right resist for burn damage, frost damage, or poison damage. Those are mainly the gems that I was switching out on a consistent basis. What made it, this would have been okay, but the way that the menu has it by sorting them, whatever tab I had left it on, it would set it back to the default one whenever I would exit the menu. So every time I would go back into the menu, I would have to go back to the column that I would normally have it left on. You combine that with the fact that some of these enchantments I wasn't even able to sell, after a while it kind of started clogging up my inventory. So I wasn't a fan of that, and that is something that was a turnoff. One of the things is that I do like as far as the weapon upgrading in this game is that you actually get a skill preview of these skills. In the past, if you liked the weapon and you wanted to upgrade it, you were basically just kind of upgrading blindly. You didn't have any idea what the skill was going to do until you actually used it after you had put stock into the weapon. Now, at this point, you can do that beforehand. You'll know exactly what you're going to be getting. I do like that. There is still some linearity and some, you need to have A in order to have B upgrading, but there is a little bit more flexibility here, so I do like that. One of the things that really surprised me in this game is the number of the rune magics that's actually in this game. There's a very wide variety of them, and you're able to equip any 2 per weapon at the same time. And again, this goes back to providing a more flexible gameplay experience for players, so I actually do enjoy that quite a bit. Enemies themselves have an actual level themselves in this game, and a majority of enemies are able to evolve their level up 2 levels. So what really does that mean? Basically, you can end up putting yourself in a 1 to 2 hit situation with some of these enemies depending on where you're at in your own gear progression. The one thing that I have noticed is their attacks will also become more potent. So let's say hypothetically a normal attack might become a guard breaking one, a guard breaking one might end up being an unblockable, and an unblockable might just end up knocking you the fuck out. So it really just depends on the enemies. For the most part, I think this is a really good system because it tethers right between a hard mode and a game mode that's like one-hit kill. I'm not personally a fan of the one-hit kill modes because I feel like if you're fighting a grunt enemy, they shouldn't be able to drop you on one hit. Now, if I was MLG at action games, I wouldn't mind it, but I'm just not that good at action games. Sorry. As far as Atreus goes in the aspect of combat, again, just no different from the story. He is the biggest detriment here. From what I've noticed, enemies will naturally try to evolve on their own. However, if Atreus is off to the side just attacking them and whatnot, they are going to more aggressively try to evolve. Now, from a storytelling perspective, this makes complete sense for Atreus to try and pull his own weight in combat, but I would rather him I wish there was a way for me to turn off his AI and have him just be on standby. and for the most part I have no control over that. Now, like I mentioned earlier in this video, fights felt more spread out than what they have been in past God of War games due to what they were trying to get accomplished. So when I'm having these fights, I don't want the AI stealing my glory. I wish there was a way for me to tell that boy to stand over to the side, shut the fuck up, play with some sticks or something, let me take care of business. I wish that was the situation, but it's not. And besides one enemy type, you don't even really need Atreus to technically help you defeat the enemy. All the other enemies Kratos is able to defeat, although Atreus can come in handy with the arrows as playing as a means of distraction in some situations. Still, he's very annoying. Also, his notifications got on my last nerves. Now, I know the counter argument here will be, well, if you didn't take so much damage, you wouldn't have this problem. I am a guy that is a big trial and error guy. It may take me 50 times to get through something, but I will eventually get it right. His notifications got old really quick. Let me give you a few examples.
Father, you're hurt! Father, you need a healing stone! Father, you're on fire! Father, you're poisoned! Father, incoming attack!
And sometimes these incoming attacks will be coming from the front side, and I could see that clear as day. It's like, dude, again, I get it. From a story lore telling perspective, it makes sense to have this in the combat, reflective in the combat as well. But for a gameplay enjoyment, it got on my last nerves. I just wish he would just shut the hell up. Alright, just real quick, before I end this video off, I want to talk about that side content in this game. Since this is an action RPG, there is side content in this game, which, you know, to my surprise, for the most part, I have no complaints about the side content in this game. It's, for the most part, pretty straight fire, except for one thing that I had to complain about that ended up being a turn off for me. But other than that, the side content I really enjoyed in this game, way more so than the main campaign. So, Muspelheim starts off with an M. I know I'm butchering that, I'm sorry. That whole entire map is basically like this game's equivalent of Challenge of the Gods or Challenge of the Titans in past God of War games. There is a little bit of an RNG factor to it, but, you know, nothing too radical on the RNG aspect. And then there's Niflheim, which is basically like this map that has like this poisonous fog that will eventually kill you. I hated this map because there's a certain loot drop that you need to do to unlock these realm tiers and be able to fight the enemies within it. And so you're running through this map, and there's no way, and this drop is RNG in these chests, and there's only 2 locations on the map where you can get this. And so if you don't get it, you more or less kind of wasted your time in some aspect if these are the only things that you need. I wish there was some method in this game to where you would be able to exchange so many missed echoes to be able to get that, because when I'm playing an action game, I want to be able to do something and be done with it. If I was playing like a straight up RPG, or if this game or if this IP had historically been a action RPG, I probably would have just sucked it up and dealt with it. But because I have had satisfactory set in stone experience with past God of War games, I came into this game expecting RNG not to rear its ugly head, but it ended up doing it in this fashion here. So that's really the only thing that was a turnoff for me as far as this map goes. I want to say actually one of the saving graces of this game for me with its side content was actually the Valkyries and their respective storylines. Because this was a one-on-one fight for the most part with these Valkyries, the camera was not an issue here, so that was really nice. And the Valkyrie were very challenging fights, and this is a good way to copy and paste code while still keeping your fights interesting, because each of these Valkyries did something unique. And then the super boss version of all of these Valkyries basically incorporated all the unique moves from each of these individual Valkyries. So I really did love that. The Valkyries was definitely easily my favorite part of this God of War game. Also, there were some side stories that were going on and whatnot, and I also thoroughly enjoyed those as well. So despite me walking away from this game with a pretty dissatisfied experience, I will say that this is still a good game, just one that I was not really able to enjoy because it really just rubbed me the wrong way. And as it stands, this is my least favorite God of War game that I've played. With that being said, I have an understanding of why there are people that are turned off by this game that have historically liked God of War, and I also understand why there's people on the other end of the spectrum that really love this God of War game. So I get both sides. My change of heart with this game came from the things that I did enjoy in this game, and hopefully those things do carry over into future God of War games. And the things that I dislike, hopefully those will become a less significant factor in my gameplay experience in future God of War games. Anyways, if you've watched this or listened to all this, be safe out there. Thank you. Take care.